being professor of games is like being with the people. You are not a professor of classical literature, right?
Yeah, the people's professor.
Do you really think we are still there, or do you think that soon we will not? I already see like a little bit of it. So if you don't know the newest awkward game which nobody played and you haven't played it, that you are not worthy. And if you play Call of Duty, then you are out. Right? You know what I mean? It's like there is already element of elitism. Like in every art, it started as a people's thing, like opera. Started as people's thing. Now to opera you go if you're like PhD level or something, right? It was people's thing. It was street people's thing, right?
Yeah.
The games are like were like this too, and then they become like more and more elitist, small elitist, and they're like now really there.
Not really, though.
Not yet.
No. And I think it used to be very, very important to me, and I still care about it, but about trying to elevate that, like elevate game, not necessarily their status culturally, but just elevate what people are even trying to do. And then I started to understand more nuance I didn't see before in, I guess, craft of game design, which maybe I didn't quite appreciate at the start of my journey of trying to take games seriously professionally, where there is a lot of really impressive craft that goes into some of these like dumb, low art games. So it's like it was already there, I guess. The thing that was important about games was already there. The problem with games is so okay. On the one hand, I think the craft of game design super important, and there's a lot to talk about. Even the most abstract, boring games we take for granted, like solitaire, I think are great things to talk about. On the other hand, games are dumb. So many are dumb, like really exceptionally dumb, not thoughtful like a teenager would be thoughtful, and some games, right? And so I think the problem with game academia and or people who try to speak up for games is they're not willing to really own the fact that games are judge-worthy and not even condemnable. It's like imagine if you only lived in the Saw movies. Like every day you just wake up and start watching a movie like Saw
or Marvel.
Yeah, maybe Marvel. At least there's humor, or I don't know. Like there's a little more going on in the Marvel movies.
I have never seen Saw movies, so I know what it is. But
yeah, I've seen one of them, but they're awful, right? But that said, it's okay to let your brain go down some awful trash thing every now and then. And so games are complicated because they're kind of both, and not to mention the fact that it's bringing together all the visual media and audio and narrative and it's interactivity. All this stuff is coming together, and it's just a big mess that is fun to work in, honestly, right? Because it is such a mess. There's so much. I feel like there's opportunity with games, but anyway.
So we are not yet there, but you think we will not get there? That the games will be like films? That there will be like this elite level games, and then the rest plays the simple games, which we don't talk about. You don't think we get there?
Yeah, there's so many hurdles. Like I've been pretty. Sometimes I think, in the same way you can see we're picking on Marvel things. Let's say lovingly. I don't know if it's lovingly, but what's it called if you just feel kind of like?
Oh, I watched all of them. I just think they're.
Yeah, I feel sure about it.
But
I don't want to say bad. But I'm not going to say good either. Just sure. That's how I feel about Marvel. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Trying to defend Marvel movies. I lost my train of thought.
Well, we were discussing whether.
What would an movies made for adults be? You know what they are when you see them, right? When you see a movie, you're like, okay, yeah, this is a grown-up thing. And then what are those of games, right? And then people point at things where people are moved by them, and I'm not I don't want to take away people's feeling emotional about a game they played or whatever, but it's like, I don't know, I can still point to a lot of things. You're still controlling a little cartoon jumping around the screen at the end of the day, or you're still ignoring what you're doing for 90% of the game, which is mashing a button and like blowing people up or something, right? Like so there's some aspects of it that feel adult because people feel emotional about it, but I still think it's a challenge. There are very few games that feel Like they're this like cohesive, and I think that's going to be what it takes to be what you're talking about, where there are the games that are hoity-toity or that are, and I don't have an answer. And also, by the way, of course, there are exceptions to this. And if I could think of one in a second, every example I keep trying to explain away, that is not hitting the mark for me of an adult game.
I kind of know what you mean because we have this problem in immersive media, which I'm working on.
Yeah.
Every year it is slightly better when I go to like a Venice Film Festival or even Cannes now is doing it, but it's not yet there. It's not yet there. And in games, I think maybe the problem is the competition between fun of playing and engagement of playing and the sophistication of the context which you would like to put there. It's always like on top of it. You can't like ignore it. You could give that game to a 5-year-old who will completely not understand and enjoy it. You cannot give a 5-year-old a film which has multi-layered meaning in it, and he will not enjoy it, right?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to what happens when you're playing games is they are interactive, so people have to do something. And so what are the things that people do? Now this gets to my whole research agenda. What are the things that people do when they play games? They control a little person walking around a 3D simulated space. That's one thing that they do. So that's already, I don't know how deep or interesting is that. I don't know, it could be, right? Moving something around space. You could do environmental storytelling. So you could make a game about walking around and seeing things. And heck, a lot of people have. They have the walking simulator genre, which is all about people trying to make games that are just about walking around. They aim a cursor at things. So imagine the center of the screen is a dot, and then you're kind of trying to click when the dot hits there. That's what all shooting games are, right? And so it's just, I think, it's always been my story that, what are the other interesting things that we can have people thinking about doing while they're playing games? And I think game industry is very, very conservative at experimenting with what those things are. And it's basically about physics simulation and branching dialogue trees, maybe. That would like sum up 99%
for many realism of the rendering, right?
In rendering, of course, yeah. But I've always been one to.
Well, maybe we're waiting for a genius of game design still. Maybe this Leonardo da Vinci had not yet come, and maybe the AI will allow it because, like movies, creating games is extremely expensive, and it's getting cheaper with AI, but it's still very extremely expensive and. There is millions of people who might have an amazing idea which will never be made. So maybe that's the time when we can like instruct an AI to build an entire game based on very detailed prompt that might bring about very interesting games, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, games are really hard to make. So that's part of the problem, right? Games are very, very hard to make. So it might make it easier for other people to make games. I'm hesitant to give credit to the code generation. I would love to talk about that more. I did play with Cursor quite a bit, which is.
But you basically still deny the reality of the fact that that LLMs will be so good. I think that they will be way better than any best coder ever, right? Like you think it is not the case.
Well, again, what does good mean in this?
Well, in code you can define it, right? So
sure. Oh, you mean better coders?
Yeah. So example,
sure.
better coders. So you can.
I don't deny that code generation is going to be huge. Right?
Yeah, what I mean is when you create a game, right? Like right now, what I have to do, I have to learn some engine. Like I use Unity, right? Game engine. I need to know C# well. After a few years, I'm getting the good ideas. What is optimized, what is not. It still takes so much time and so much effort to get relatively small game, right?
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Imagine that there is a game designer whose only role is to design the gameplay itself, to balance it, but everything else is automatically made and controllable. So the AI shows you the result, and you're like, no, like this is this artistic effect here. It's like conversation with a game artist rather than, then what I mean, it would potentially democratize the game design.
So one, maybe it's going to be better, but none of that's new, what you just described, like the field of like game generation and procedural content generation and this kind of mixed initiative they call tools, where you have the human and the tool go back and forth. I think that can be very powerful and interesting. But then pretty quickly you get to the problem of, if it's so easy to make things, then suddenly who cares about the things that were made, right? Like, it's like we don't need more games necessarily, right? In fact, I'm guilty of this. Like, I've been living in emulation space for a while now and playing it's like nothing but old games. It's like I don't know if I think they might have solved snowboarding games 20 years ago. I think that was pretty much it. I don't know. Like, so if I want to play snowboarding games, I can just go back. Racing games, kind of similar. What am I trying to say? So no, we don't need more games unless it's how they look, maybe. And their game design sensibility is changing too. They're more friendly now than they used to be. Games are, but
I just mean like democratization aspect. So look, like right now, how many people can afford making games? Well, first of all, living in the West, maybe in some countries who invest in games. So this is like from 7 billion people who would have an idea, who play computer games, let's say 6 billion plays computer games, then you have a tiny minority who can ever put their creative powers into the game. If we had AIs which help you to do it quite high quality on whatever you want to do, and that the same thing will apply to films, then it's only a question of your creativity and your idea. It's no longer a question of resources. So it's full democratization of access, right? I assume that this is the science fiction world we're living in 10 years.
Yeah.
When you just say and it happens, right? Like magical words.
Yeah.
That might bring about amazing games and art and everything, right? That might be the other side of the coin.
Maybe. Yeah, I know, maybe like it might. And then I guess do you think the person who generated that prompt was pretty cool, I guess, right? Yeah, and it's a matter of like, what are you trying to do with the stuff you're creating? Are you just trying to, this is the other thing about, I don't want to launch into an AI, like ideological divide between, what's the point of the AI that you're doing? Are you just trying to entertain people? Like, are you just trying to make people engaged? Or are you trying to solve a problem, like a defined problem, right? And if that's what you're trying to do, you're probably going to do it with this technology. That's been happening, right? Then I guess I'm just doing that stupid artist move where it's like, we're not solving problems, we're making them, right? Like and I just think that that's important not to lose sight of a little bit. Like, I don't know what that would mean exactly, to be like, okay, this AI that I told it, basically I gave it a goal, and fast forward 5-10 years. I want to make a game that is kind of action based, but I don't want it to be like any game I've seen before. And I want it to, I don't even know what you would say in this prompt. And then it goes, and I say, not like this, like that one. And then eventually I get this game. Like, wow, that's awesome. And then I release it, I guess. I guess if it's that easy, everyone's going to be doing that.
Yeah, I mean that you're right. But I mean that there will be this one person, this 2 people, this 10 people in the world who would never have made these games, but now can make them. And these games could be the most wonderful pieces of art.
Well, that also happened recently. I mean, it's maybe it's like a asymptote thing, but when I started making games, it was really hard. But guess what? It was a lot easier than it was 10 years before that. When my students are learning to make games, it's a lot easier right now. And I'm not saying that as a snob, I'm just saying the tools are way better, right? And so, but this recent bump in tools brought about that whole walking simulator genre, as I understand it. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the games where you just walk around and so the whole shift, and actually credit tools and this shift in the types of independent games that were being made. For a while there, it was all about game mechanic experimentation. And then people started rebelling, and I'm from that generation, and people started rebelling against that. And hey, look, we have these tools. Screw your game mechanics. Like, I don't care about game mechanics. I can download a first person, I can just drop a first person controller in here and start placing 3D assets around, and I can represent stuff about my identity and my history. And so people started making all these games that weren't able to before, right? And the games looked very different, and that's your point. But it's going to be like another level of that.
Yeah, but it's significantly other because, we teach game development, and we know that, yes, it is incomparably easier. When I wrote my first game, it was actually quite broken when I was like 14 in Pascal. It took me 8,000 lines to create something like very, very not working clone of Dune 2.
Yeah.
That was my like goal. It was happening in Middle Ages. It was called Castles. I lost the disc.
Say Doom 2?
Dune.
Dune.
2. Yeah.
Like the
RTS.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it was basically clone of.
It's impressive though. You were working on an RTS-ish thing.
Well, you need to see it. It was really bad. It was really bad. It was procedural programmed, in Pascal, not objects. But I was, it was so hard. And then Unity came about, and other games engine, and it became easier. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Yeah. We know from our students, right? Like, they have a semester of creating games, and in one semester they can accomplish maybe a prototype if they work in a group, use a lot of resources from asset stores. That's what you can maybe get in one. What I mean is like, it's like magic, right? It will be like magic. You will just say, you will have a conversation with AI for 5 days, and if your idea is amazing and you can describe it and you can iterate over this idea with AI, that might bring about games we cannot dream about, like things which we never thought about are.
I think that's possible. Yes.